And so I've got 7 facts I'm going to share with you, and I'm really excited about this one, so stick around. So it's a bit of an odd angle of the picture here, but as I say, it's the only one I could get. She is a water hand. Now look at the thickness of the fingers, really chunky, shows a strength of personality, strength of skills, and no nonsense approach. This person was not going to get pushed around, and she had a really strong ability to have her message heard. And in part, this is why she was such an advocate for such strong and charitable ethical causes. And the strength of the thumb as well is just, this is a very sort of bull-headed stubbornness, a great deal of courageousness about this person. Uh, but in particular, the first thing I want to point out here, the number one, the first I find really interesting detail here is there's a line here, a vertical line on the tip of Apollo. Now, Apollo is also square. So these two things in conjunction with each other show us someone who has extreme, unique sense of aesthetics, how things should look. It's to do with taste in general, but specifically how things should look. Now, whenever we see squareness in the palms, it's always a sign of things needing to be in their right place. She had a neat sense of order in terms of aesthetics. Things had to look a certain way. And this probably got her into a little bit of trouble in terms of finances, probably um, caused a bit of frustration and friction in relationships, just in general. Because when a person has a vertical line on the tip of the Apollo figure, sometimes their extremist ideas in terms of creativity and in how things should look can get them into a spot of bother. Depends really. And if especially the headline droops way down into Luna, then we've got actually there's quite a bit of danger there of someone getting a bit carried away. But really, this just shows how she had a very neat sense of order when it came to fashion. And really, it shows, given the reason why, as exactly how and why she became the fashion icon that she was and still is, really. So point number two I want to make here is look at this fascinating headline, the length of it. Now it's got a nice curve, but not too much so that it's um, sending her, as I say, into some sort of unrealistic thinking. She's creative, but she's also level-headed enough to have a good sense of practicality about her. The length of the headline shows us, in conjunction with the length and the thickness of Mercury, a real strong ability to learn and remember. And this also in conjunction with, because she's got more than one fate line, but she has a fate line that rises from the lifeline. And this is always someone in a very sort of physically demanding career role. Now, these things combined, the length of the headline, the length and strength of Mercury, as well as a fate line rising from the lifeline, shows us superb memory recall, but also that ability to work in a very sort of physical environment. Now, these two things give me this conclusion, or at least point me in the direction of a dancer. And it's also really helpful for not just learning routines, but learning lines as well. And there's that physicality, that physical energy, great physical energy needed to carry out these uh, routines, these dance routines. She was, of course, a ballet dancer when she was young. So I just thought the combination of these signs here was really quite telling as to who we have here. Water hands are often um, in creative industries. They're often models, actors, dancers. So again, it's really this is why it's partly really important to look at the character template before filtering through the more complex information in the palms. She was also a messenger for the Allies in World War II, and Mercury, the finger is the finger of communication. And look at the strength, the length of the tip of Mercury here, and this shows extreme, maybe not extreme, but superb verbal expressive abilities. Obviously, all the classic kind of golden age Hollywood actors were the triple threats. They were singers, dancers, and actors. You kind of had to be all three, and she certainly had the ability with all three. It's funny because Hollywood A-list actors these days just don't have the kind of strength of the Mercury finger that, the quality of Audrey Hepburn, her and her peers had in her day. And I say strength of the Mercury finger, I mean that length and the thick. Now, the third thing I want to point out here is the heart line. Look at this heart line. It's incredibly low lying, which shows strong compassion, shows the need for that capacity to love This is someone who, if she saw a puppy on the side of the road, not only would she adopt it, but she'd probably give a, a ruck of money to shelters and just contact lots of people and create a lot of hype and buzz around the need um, to look after um, animals in need. I'm just trying to come up with an example here, but the that low lying heartline, it shows that um, she probably would have fallen for a sob story, in the blink of an eye. She wears a heart on her sleeve. The curvature of the heart line, the depth of the heart line. This is indeed the strongest line in her hand. I mean, we can't really see the lifelines. The only real regrettable thing about this image, but she is certainly dominated by her emotions. Her decisions were governed and ruled by her heart. So at times she was likely as well um, got involved men, and that's because the curvature, the way it rises so sharply up towards Saturn, and it branches out nicely in between Jupiter and Saturn as well. And this shows us someone with a strong ethical compass, certainly, but it also shows a strong need and desire for her own um, need to be loved. So not only she had that strength of heart, that she was not only a strong lover, but had that equally that strength of a need to be loved as well. He was extremely giving, but needed someone in equal measure in a partner to have that same capacity for love. And that's a hard match to find with someone with such a heart line. And the other thing I want to point out here is just before I move on, the distance between the head and the heart line. It's it's far greater at the beginning of her life and later on. And that's interesting because early on in life, she was, as I say, a messenger for the Allies. She raised money for the Allies. And then in later on in life, she moved again towards charitable aims. Now, the distance between the head and the heart line shows generosity, warmth of spirit and character, that need to give and to love. It shows an open mind and an open heart because it's both the head and the heart line. I thought that was a really interesting fact. So I'll move on to point 4, and that is the headline. And it is just a fascinating feature about the palm. As I mentioned, it's got a nice curvature. It's just about creative, but it's also got a good sense of stability about it. And at the end, at the tip, it's like a trident, but I'm a little bit uncertain about as to exactly how to interpret this because a cross on the headline would show some sort of misfortune, an accident, potentially. It would show some sort of obstacle, a real challenge, and maybe there's some sort of deception, self-deception, or self-sabotage here. But that overall length of the headline shows it's one of the signs of fame in palmistry. To have a headline this long, it shows someone's actions, their decisions affect and influence the lives of many, and in this case, certainly for the better. And I find it really interesting as well. Most water hands, and I know this image doesn't really give you that impression of a water hand, but she certainly is. And that's because I've looked at other images of the backs of her hands, and you can clearly see this lady is a water hand, long palm, long fingers. Most water hands are daydreamers. Now, if her headline dipped, low down into lunar, we would likely see that. And that's a very common feature of water hands. They are, you know, dreamers. They are constantly conceiving fantastical notions and uh, hypothesizing what ifs. But I don't see that here. I do see partly a struggle here with the idea of the self. But what I see is certainly someone who is thinking ahead. There's a long-term goal here. There's always another goal in mind. The headline as well, I mean, you could say this is a fork, certainly a writer's fork, and actors often have this because it provides a sense of perspective, an ability to see things from more than one angle. Also provides a bit of indecision as well because you're constantly seeing things from more than one angle, and it makes you kind of sit on the fence in arguments because you never really you can see that, you can see that. So I'm neither, you're kind of a bit feckless in that sense. I don't think she was in any shape or form feckless. But I do see this rising line from the headline here. It shows a need to um, secure the future. And as I say, a long headline is always someone who's thinking ahead anyway, planning ahead. And so we see actually a little bit of fear here around what's going to happen. And I find it interesting that this line develops where it kind of develops from, it's sort of pointing towards this age of 31, where we see this break in the fate line. And that is just absolutely fascinating because it coincides with another sequence of Palmer markings, which I have been able to conclude from. Which brings me to number five, the fate line. Check it out. There's more than one. And the first one here, you can see it beginning way down on lunar. And it's always seen in the hands of people who wish to help others, to work with and for others. Now you can see it at this time. It's a burning line. It's etched in. It's seared into the hand. She has a burning desire to work with and for others. The secondary fates line rises from the lifeline. As I say, this is always seen in the hands of people who have very sort of physical roles. She was a dancer, and that uses just the entirety of your mind and body. Now, what I find fascinating about the fate line is particularly in water hands, the fate line is um, a measure of spinal health. Now, when we see, particularly water hands have a susceptibility to poor spinal health, lower back issues, particularly, um, and it's just a generalization. But when we see a break in the fate line of a water hand, it's quite often, it's even more of a signifier, strengthens that conclusive ability there to draw on. We can say with almost certainty that this person has broken her spine at the age of 31. Now, I just find that fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I looked, and during a film called um, Unforgiven in 1960, she fell off a horse at the age of 31 and broke her back. She broke her spine. Now look at this. Check this out. This is amazing. The health line here, it comes, the health line looks to attack the fate line at the age of 31. Her health is directly having an impact, is jarring her spine and saying, no, no, you're all right. You're going to start over here now. And it's literally showing us that her back has been broken. And her fate line after this time changes direction, perspective changes. Now, it's strengthened after this time. This is also a fascinating sign because the fate line shows us where it's stronger, shows us that our purpose is being fulfilled, shows us we have a stronger fulfillment in life. We are fulfilling our destiny. That's what it's showing us. So the fact that it's changed course and that it's stronger is showing us that she is happier. Why? Because in that same year, she gave birth to her son, and this is what she always wanted. This was one of her life's aims, her ambitions was to have a family. She left someone who left someone else because she found out that he couldn't have children. And and that's because of this heartline. It comes back to this heartline, the need to give and to love and to equally receive that love as well. So I just find that an absolutely fascinating feature. I was just blown away when I saw that in her hands. Now, the health line, this is my sixth point I want to make here. I find it really interesting because it kind of again coincides with this age at 31. When we see a cross on the health line, it shows potential infertility. Now, I don't see a cross here on the health line, but I do see some sort of interference, kind of like a junction crossroads trying to form. And again, it's kind of, it's hinting at this age at least. You can't really time events on the health line, but it is hinting at fertility issues. I'm not going to say infertility because that obviously didn't happen and it's not a cross anyway. But I just thought that was a really interesting fact. She miscarried at least once. During her second pregnancy, she miscarried at 6 months. So I thought that was quite telling of that fact as well. It's really regrettable that we can't see the lifeline because I would expect to see some sort of square, probably around here, um, on the lifeline, inside of the lifeline, where she was hospitalized at the age of 31, where she broke her spine, and also um, at the age of 41, 10 years later, she had her second son in 1970. And, you can see again the fate line. It's still really strong at this time. There's real sense of fulfillment and achievement. And it's probably this here, this, you can see where the strength of the fate line is a lot stronger I mean, it's hard to know really. We just don't have much clarity. I'm just sort of surmising here, but unfortunately, I can't really see the marriage lines with any great clarity, or children lines, or any of that. So it's just an interesting fact. But the seventh thing I want to point out here, which I felt was probably the second most important and a fascinating fact about her hands, is this: it is her ambition line that rises from the lifeline. You may have already picked up on it, and it sort of forms this little shepherd's hook. It curls around and swings towards the Saturn mount high up on Jupiter. And I just find this just tremendous. Just look at it, and where it rises from the lifeline at the age of 21, we can see the secondary kind of achievement here, and again this um, idea of the future, planning ahead. It points directly towards outer Mars, and it's sort of saying, "I'm going to be a star. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be more than that. I'm going to have a family. I'm going to give back," and that's exactly what she does. Because you notice this ambition line, it sort of serves to better herself, um, to achieve greatness, stardom, wealth, fame, notoriety, and that's certainly important to her, given that we have such a long Apollo finger. But then, as it rises up onto Jupiter and we've achieved these aims, we've completed everything. Okay, well now what do we do? Now we swing these aims towards Saturn, the place of societal contribution, traditional values, and time and planning, and giving back. And it shows a real sense of contribution towards others. I've just find this palm just absolutely fascinating. Now, at the age of 63, and this is for me where it all kind of it falls into place, and we have just a stunning conclusion. 21 and 63 are likely karmic years, and not just because they're perfectly divisible by seven, but because 21 is where she really began her rise to fame. A soaring great height, uh, journey to a massive elevation into huge stardom. But then 63 was where it all started that great rise, the end to that great rise began, and that was when she was diagnosed of cancer. Now, at 63, on the sun line, you can see a bit of a square here, but you can also see a line rising from the sunline swinging over towards Mercury. And now this mount, especially in between Mercury and Apollo, it shows us the overall place of where we are, um, our achievements, our talents, our skills being shown off to the world, our sense of worth and who we are. And she was given a presidential honor in that year, 1992, because of her charitable work. Um, she had traveled uh, multiple times, like something like 50 times across around the world with UNICEF, raising money, raising awareness for children in, dangerous, often in very dangerous environments, and in poverty. And again, the sheer courage and strength of her heart was never going to stop her. Nothing's going to stop her. But I just thought it was a tremendous sign that we saw, um, 63. We see this elevation in a kind of it shows it's a real badge of honor, a real merit of achievement, and a sense of okay, finally I've been recognized actually here for what I'm doing here, and I hope others take this example and follow in my footsteps. And I also find that the following year, 93, she died in Switzerland. Um, but what you do notice is the sunline continues onwards after this time, as though her work and herself are just immortal, which she is. And I just thought that was a really beautiful and sad thing, but also tremendously fascinating. Let me know what your thoughts are on this palm reading. And also, I'd love to hear your comments on who you'd like me to read in my next week's Sunday case study. If you'd like to learn with me, join my level 2 membership on YouTube, and you can learn with a growing, emerging community of palmists. And I'll be providing fortnightly lessons with members only videos, and you can check out my assignments on my website, on my blog, on my website. Thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe.